Hi, and welcome to Occupy Ukiah TV for June 14th, 2012. I'm Charlie Vaughn, and today we've got CJ Holmes in the studio with us, and we're going to do a whole show on foreclosures. Should be interesting. Before we jump into that, I'm going to do a quick introduction to a few things that Occupy Ukiah is going to be doing in the near future. Let's go to the blue screen here, Alex. We are going to be, on July 14th, we are going to be hosting a Localize Your Money Forum. And that is going to be at Alex Thomas Plaza. It's going to be Saturday, July 14th. At 11 a.m., we will be doing an economic crisis forum where we'll be talking about what's going on. At noon, we're going to march to the three major banks here in town, B of A, Wells Fargo, and Chase, and we will be carrying signs and encouraging people to move their money to local credit unions and savings banks. And then we're going to have a potluck in the park, and during the potluck we'll have an open mic, and people can come up and speak about anything they want to on these topics that we're going to be covering. Commercial bank facts, we'll have some people presenting some of that. We're hoping to have some scheduled speakers as well. Also, we are going to talk about credit unions versus commercial banks. We're going to talk about the North Dakota bank model. North Dakota, by the way, is the only state in the country that didn't go in the tank with this whole crash. And then we're going to be talking about economic localization, why and how. Follow our website, occupyukiah.info, and you can get more information on that. So that's all about that for now. And I'd like to move on to a real quick nuclear update. You know I'm always talking about nuclear, and I'm not going to stop. And I want you to get on board, and I don't want you to stop. Listen to, if you go online, listen to NPR's show from June 12th. That was on Tuesday. And it's an awesome show with a woman who lived in Rocky Flats, Colorado, and talking about the Rocky Flats weapons factory there. It's a well-known catastrophe. Actually, the Fed went in and raided it because they were messing up so bad. That's an outrage. It's horrible. That's only part of the story. There's a lake right near Rocky Flats. I believe it's called Lake Meredith. It's in the show. The woman's incredible. She does a great job of telling about it. Her brother was walking his dog there recently. The dog's a Labrador, likes to go in the water. Labrador goes bounding in the water, and all of a sudden a boat comes up and says, "Get your dog out of the water." And the guy laughs. He says, "What are you talking about?" It's a Labrador. He says, "Get your dog out of the water." He said, "Why?" So they had a discussion. This lake provides water to the local township. People swim in it, people water ski in it, but they don't want you swimming from the shore, and they don't want you stirring up the sediment. Why? The sediment has plutonium in it. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. So they don't want anybody stirring up the bottom of that lake for 24,000 years. If you want to see some ridiculous information, go back and look at how the geography of this world has changed in 25,000 years. I believe there was a land bridge from Asia to North America less than 25,000 years ago. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about that. We are going to continue on this nuclear issue. We're not going to give up. If you're interested, go to that. Go to NPR's site and go to the show Under the Nuclear Shadow of Colorado's Rocky Flats, and just check it out. And if it doesn't piss you off, then I don't know if you're even alive. All righty. So we're going to get to the main bulk of the show today. We have CJ Holmes with us. She drove all the way up from Santa Rosa. Welcome, CJ.
Thank you.
And she's been on KZYX here a couple of times, and I've been looking at her stuff online and just been blown away. And we are very interested in dealing with foreclosures in Occupy Ukiah. And so I called her up, and I thought, well, maybe she'll come up, or maybe we can do a phone conversation. She said, "You bet I'll come up." She's here. She says she'll go anywhere, anytime. So we're going to jump right into our information because CJ has so much of it, we won't be able to put it all in this show. This may be a long show, and it's going to be worth it. You're going to hear information like you have never heard before on foreclosures. I haven't heard anybody who knows what CJ knows. So basically, let's, why don't you do a little intro about who you are and what you do and how'd you get into all this?
Okay, thank you. And if you don't mind, you can start getting the slides ready.
Okay, great. I'll get your
My name is
slides
CJ
going.
Holmes. I'm a real estate broker, independent, in Santa Rosa. I've been licensed since 1998, and in 2005 got my broker's license. And in 2008, when the prices started falling, I became a real estate market analyst, trying to figure out how bad was it going to be and how long was it going to take. In the process of that discovery, I have become now an activist. And like Charlie said, I will pretty much go anywhere, anytime, as long as I can fit it in my schedule, to speak out, try to get everybody aware of what is actually happening, what we're facing, how we may be able to fix it. And in the end, you're going to understand when I say the only hope we have in this country is for 1 million homeowners to get out of their seats, out of their houses, onto the streets, and demanding the heads of these banks get cut off. We must demand it because no one else is going to protect us. But enough about me. I'd like you to show slide 1, please. So I've set up a little business called Homeowners for Justice. It's a nonprofit organization, and we're trying to get the news out. And I have a website, www.hofj.org, and it is a working website. It changes frequently. When I learn more stuff, I make changes. When there's more articles to link, I link them on my page called Stealing Our Homes Log. When there's legal action by state, then that goes on that web page. Let me just verbalize some of the sources of my information, because I haven't made this stuff up. I've been reading, studying, reading the articles, reading the books. One of the best books, if you really want to know who started this mess and where it's gone and what has not happened, like no lawsuits or punishment to these perpetrators, read Reckless Endangerment by Gretchen Morgenson. She's a fabulous writer. They have documented this, and it began early on. It began in the 90s. This was 10 years in the making before they ever really came to market with securitization. Another excellent website is Living Lies weblog. Neil Garfield is one of the first little short videos that I listened to, 10 minutes, and he said this is how it exactly worked. And they did everything backwards. That's also linked on my site. But go to Living Lies or go to Mandelman Matters. And then there's various writers like Ellen Brown, Matt Taibbi from the Rolling Stones. These people have put in countless hours of research, and what they are saying is true. And that is, we are dealing with systemic fraud. If you go to the next page. Good,
next
we got
slide. We're up.
the next slide. We're up. They got it done.
I want to thank Alex. He is our new engineer for today, and he's doing an awesome job. And he just came in and saved my bacon.
Ours. Saved all of ours. The word will get out.
Bacon needs to be saved often.
This page, it is just an overview of what my web page looks like right now. When you log into hofj.org, you're going to see on the left-hand side these pages. And I will be referring to them throughout the evening. Mainly, the Stealing Our Homes log has probably 300 links in order by date of what has hit the news, starting with some of the earliest information. And one of my little videos was done in 2009. And I basically said, this is a foreclosure rescue plan. Either we must stop foreclosures or we're going to lose our home values. And of course I'm right. I was right. But no one listened. I didn't have any voice. There was nobody paying any attention. So in the meantime, some counties have lost 75% of value since 2009.
Wow.
So the fact is, there's legal action by state, our 5 crusades, and we're going to be discussing those tonight. So this is basically a summation, in my own words, of the research and the work that I've done.
All right. So yeah, we can talk about some of this other stuff. Now, a lot of times, you know, what people want to know is what's the big deal about getting foreclosed? Isn't a person who's getting foreclosed just somebody who just is kind of a deadbeat? They stop paying on something they owe, and when you stop paying on something they owe, they take it away from you. I mean, so why is being foreclosed such a bad thing, and why is it happening to so many people?
Well, this is part of the problem. And the problem is this. I will answer that quickly, and it's going to come up again in some of the other topics that we discuss. But the fact is, if you want to have your loan modified, or the value is so far upside down and they won't modify your loan, so you have to sell short, when you call your servicer, what are the first things they tell you? Without exception, with every owner in this country, they will tell the person, the borrower, you must default on your loan for 60 days.
Right. I remember you hear.
So in other words, what they're saying is, you have to be a deadbeat.
Right.
Once you're a deadbeat, we'll work with you.
Right.
And then, of course, once you're a deadbeat, they're not going to work with you.
Then they foreclose on you.
Then they foreclose.
So they trick you into saying,
Bingo.
we're going to work with you, and then they foreclose on you.
That's right.
And it's because they're making money when they foreclose on you.
Yes, and we will be talking about that in more specifics also.
Because, I mean, it would seem counterproductive for a bank to actually cheat its customer out of their home. You would think it would be, people would get the word out and say, don't deal with those people, but it's kind of like everybody's doing it.
The fact is, it wasn't the bank's money. It isn't the bank's money. It's not the bank's loan. They do not actually legally have any authority to modify any loan or sell any property short.
Because your mortgage gets bundled up and sold many, many, many times, so they don't actually
because of the
own it.
securitization process.
Right.
That is actually true.
Which is a lot of these terms, like, you know, when I hear things like securitization process, my head spins to try to figure out what we're talking about. And so we're here tonight to try to figure out some of that. Another question that's in this realm is, should prices go back up? For instance, I owned a home before I moved down here. I lived in Seattle, and it was a sweet little house. Unfortunately, I had to sell it in '97. If I'd held on to it for 3 years, I probably would have gotten double what I could have gotten if I just waited, but I didn't. But after that, I moved down here, and I just watched home prices just go through the roof, and it was the bubble. And so actually, when I heard that home prices were falling, I was sort of secretly inside going, well, that's a good thing, because I can't afford to own a house anymore. That'll be the last house I ever bought. So why do we want prices to go back up? I understand that everybody that paid for their house is now upside down. But didn't they buy into a falsely inflated market? And isn't that sort of the gamble of real estate?
It never would have happened if the banks had not created it to happen. This is one of the issues. It is not our fault that we've had this foreclosure pandemic. Mm-hmm. It's not our fault that prices ballooned. Mm-hmm. It's not our fault that we took those loans. It is the bank's fault because they created those loans in the first place. They made only those loans available. They stopped underwriting on those loans. In other words, they gave loans to people that could never afford it.
Right.
They violated truth in lending laws 100%. They have never been prosecuted for that, virtually. And there's a statute of limitations on that. So people now go back and say, you never should have loaned this to me. Or, hey, that loan officer signed my name. That's fraudulent.
Right.
Too bad, too late, too long ago. It doesn't count. It won't matter. And so they created the bubble in the first place with other people's money. You have to understand that the banks did not use their own. They used investor money, and that investor money came from our pension funds. So they
Which are
have
all in the
gotten
tank
us.
right now.
They've gotten us every way we look.
Wow.
And we'll go into more of that.
Okay. Okay. I guess a little bit more in that realm is I saw that you said 1,000 homes a day. Is that nationwide that are going into foreclosure, or is that in California?
Actually, it's 2,700 homes a day right now that's being auctioned off in California.
No wonder you look blankly. No,
it's
sorry,
like 1,000.
not
Are you
1,000.
kidding? We're already triple
We
that.
wish it was that low. 2,700 a day in
64,000 homes
Nationwide?
in June in California
California.
faced foreclosure auction. That's not in the pipeline. That's at the very end of the pipeline of foreclosure. There's 11 million homes nationwide estimated to be in the pipeline.
Right.
There's 64,000 just in June that are going to be auctioned. But you have, it's a process, and we'll look at that process in more detail
About why.
coming up.
Yeah, why
But-
that's okay.
But the fact is there's just millions of people that are going to lose their homes needlessly and fraudulently.
And already have.
And already have. That's correct.
So are we in the middle of it? Are we just getting started? Where are we in this process?
It started in '08.
Right.
In '07, and this is the other response I give when people say, oh, these are just deadbeat people.
Right, right.
The fact is, in '07, in the 9 Bay Area counties, there were 1,695 foreclosures that whole year.
In '07.
In '07.
whole
In
year.
'08, in those 9 counties, there were 23,000 foreclosures
In a year.
in that year.
Right.
Those 23,000 people didn't just become deadbeats.
No.
What happened is that their loans exploded because the loans were written with an explosion date. In other words, all the loans were written somewhat like this. Fixed interest, 3 years for 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, that interest rate was going to pop
And go up.
and jump. So for 3 years, the person's payment was $1,500,
Yeah, yeah.
and then at the end of the 3 years, it goes to $4,500.
But weren't the people, when they signed the papers, aware that was going to happen? Were they just hoping they could afford it in 3 years?
They
or
were
what?
told, they were assured, no problem. The fact is, way before then, in 2 years, the market will go up and you'll be able to come in and we'll refinance you.
modify or
It is called a
refi.
bank refinance
Right.
business model that blew up. We bailed them out and we're losing our homes.
Wow.
And of course, they made oogobs of money, as
No
you'll see.
kidding, huh? Okay. Wow.
This is why I'm so upset. Let's take a real quick
Okay,
look at
let's
market
move on.
dynamics.
What page are we?
Should be 4, slide 4.
There we go.
This is a real quick look at how the real estate engine works. Basically, at the low, these are just plucked from air numbers. But in a market, for example, in California, this is pretty typical. A first-time buyer, an investor, or a retiree typically buys at the bottom of the price points,
Down here at the
like
bottom.
200,000. And then that owner who sold that house buys up.
Right.
He moves, it's a move-up
He
seller.
gains equity in his house.
He had equity, and so he buys a more expensive
Okay.
house. And then that seller buys a more expensive house. And it's a cycle up until you get to the peak price. Here I just stopped at 600.
Mm-hmm.
And then that seller has this equity, maybe has lived in the house for 20, 30 years, has paid it off, says, I got a retirement plan. I'm going to sell out the house. I'm going to buy something down cheap, and I'm going to live off the
off
net.
the money. Right.
Right. This is how the real estate engine works.
Yeah.
And
a
like
good
you were
plan.
saying, as the prices climb, fewer and fewer people can afford it. So this is the catch-22. And it's which side are you on? Are you on the side of the current owner who got cheated, defrauded, and is going to lose his house and all of his cash? Because right now, half the loans in foreclosure are conventional. They put $100,000 down. They owe $500. The house is now worth $275. So they say, well, golly, should I keep paying?
Right.
So they call up the bank and said, I need a loan mod. The bank says, you got to default for 60 days. Now they're a deadbeat. Now they're dual tracked.
Right. You need to go rob a 7-Eleven. They're trying to get you.
And all their
yeah.
cash is gone.
Right.
And they can't keep the house. And they end up getting pushed out. So this is the dilemma. The banks created the bubble, and instead of forcing them to fix the bubble,
right.
which would stabilize prices where they're at, they would stop falling.
Right.
But in many cases, they're much more affordable now for a broader market. So it's good enough. Yeah. We've suffered enough.
Yeah.
Let's stop the prices from falling. And if you do the next slide, you'll see why we have to stop foreclosures to stop the prices from falling. Because right now we have a distressed sales market particularly throughout California. Yeah. As we'll see soon, the Midwest of the country is not nearly so damaged as the two coastlines.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In this, here's what a distressed sales market looks like. Down at the low end, down at the 200,000, you've got a distressed sale. That bank took that property back. They're now dumping it on the market. I just talked today with an owner who is expecting to get $350,000 out of her house, and I had to tell her that the house up the street sold for $54,000.
And that means
that is a comparable now to her house.
So her value just plummeted.
Well, and there's a spread, but the spread goes from 54 to 219, and she was hoping to get 300 to 350 out of her house. Guess not. And this is she's like shrieking over the phone. What can I say? But this is the point. This is the point. It's driving the equity out. It pushes it out. So as you look at this slide, you see that at 200, they make a sale, the buyer buys it, and it's over. There is no move-up seller because they lost the house. It'd be a first-time home buyer, an investor, a retiree, or typically a renter, because any owner, once they're booted out of the house with a foreclosure or short sale, can't get a loan for 3 years.
Right. So that takes them out of the market
also. At all of these price points, with all of these distressed properties, whether they're a short sale or a foreclosure, it's almost immaterial to the market. There is no seller.
Can you explain what a short sale means?
A short sale means that you sell the property for less than what you owe.
Right.
So, for example, take my example. They bought the house for $600, put $100 down, owe $500. It's worth $300. And they go, I don't even want to pay anymore. They can't get a loan mod. The bank, they call it nicely dual tracking. I call it commits fraud against the owner by lying to them repeatedly, telling them I'll do this while they snatch the property over here.
While the foreclosure department, meanwhile, is behind the scenes getting them. Yeah.
I have watched it. I have watched the timing because I can look specifically at notice of defaults, and my client will say, oh, they just said I get a loan mod, and I notice, oh, well, they just filed a notice of default on you. So you better hurry up and make it 90 days.
So it's like a magic show. It's like, you're watching the left hand, and meanwhile the right hand is doing all the tricky stuff.
It's exactly like a magic show.
If I understood you correctly, I watched your video the other night. Every time you apply for a remodification, they get $1,000, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too.
Okay, we'll get into that.
Okay, real quick. Here's how the bank manipulates the market.
Oh, okay.
First off, that's the next slide.
Next one? Okay.
Yeah.
Slide 6 here.
Yeah. They create an oversupply. They have the foreclosures, the short sales. They sell below market. They force other loans upside down, so people strategically default. They just say, I can't pay this loan anymore. I'm going to stop. Forget it. And all of that reduces the tax revenues to the county. And this is a major reason we have such unemployment, is because they've devastated construction. Every contractor, every builder, every developer has lost their job. They've lost their homes. They've gone bankrupt. So you can't just tell the people to get a job. You can't get the companies to create more jobs when you've got a significant proportion of the country out of work, because houses now are selling for 50% or 25% of what it costs to build. It's $200 a square foot to build. Yeah. And now we're buying houses at $50 a square foot. I can't even insure them at $50 a square foot.
Wow.
It takes $180 to insure it. a square foot.
So anybody watching at home, if you've been foreclosed on, if you're out of business, if you're a construction contractor or just a worker who's out of business, listen to CJ. Doesn't it piss you off?
It pisses me off.
We are trying to get things changed in this world. That's what Occupy Ukiah is all about. Listen some more, go on to CJ's website, get involved. We can do something about this, but we can't do it by just sitting on the couch. All righty.
Now, market manipulation, oversupply is 1/2 of the structure. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
The next, the banks have created a system of under demand. They've bankrupted contractors and loan officers and agents and escrow companies, by the way, too, have all just been bankrupted by this drop in value. Any buyer or owner that loses their home cannot get a loan for 3 years.
Right.
So they've shrunk the buyer pool by 3 years of foreclosures. So you look around the various counties, and you're anywhere from 1 to 2 years worth of buyers have been locked out of the market.
Right. So do we see some of them coming back from '08 now?
After 3, yes, we do.
Things should be getting a
if
little
they have
better?
a job,
Yeah,
if they
right.
can qualify. So let's look at the other
Okay.
ways that banks have created under demand. They've tightened loan criteria. So now I call it underwriting with a vengeance. Everything has to be perfect. The house has to qualify. The buyer has to qualify. They have to have cash reserves. They have to have more cash reserves than before. They have to have a higher credit score. A lot of times banks will only sell their property cash only. So that locks out tons of buyers. And when you do that, you force the prices lower, which means every time one of these homes on your street sells for less than what you owe, you are further upside down.
Your value
This
goes
is
down.
why every
Right.
homeowner in the country should be out on the steps of their capital
Yes.
and saying, stop this. This is nonsense. All it is slow motion destruction.
Right.
And they're grinding up people one by one.
Yeah.
And divided, we're falling. Fortunately, Occupy and other organizations in various counties and areas are trying to get people collected because united,
We can do a lot.
we do have the power.
We are the
but we have to
99%,
unite.
aren't we?
I was told that if we had the 99%, this would be over.
Right.
The fact is, we don't even have 1% of the
No.
99%.
No.
If we had, I was told, if we had 1.5% of the 99%, we could get what we want.
Let's do it.
And that's what we need.
Let's do it.
Next slide.
All right. Slide number 8.
This is an interesting slide I started out with early on. I've highlighted our area, Northern California in yellow. But you'll notice that any of those red dots, so you'll see them on the East Coast and on the West Coast, those are called double trouble because that's where they have job losses and falling prices. And part of the reason that the coasts have suffered more severely than the Midwest is because we had more contractors, we had more construction, we had booming growth.
Is it because we're a more popular place to live on the coast?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
People want to
just
go to the coast, so they move
population
in.
center.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you have so when you bankrupt construction, then you're going to have falling prices and job loss. And so you have the double whammy. Next.
Okay.
This is what I've done for Mendocino County in particular, since we're here in Mendocino tonight. I can do this for any county in the state. The fact of the matter is, right now, for July, since we're halfway through June, let's count July. Coming in July, for homes only, these are homes only, these are not 1 to 4 units, land, commercial, there are 28 notice of defaults filed in July, coming due in July, which means then they turn into an auction. And then there are 44 home auctions already scheduled for July.
I see one there on West Road. It's just
Now,
a couple miles
if
from
you
where we
look,
live.
if I want you to start sort of at the bottom, you go down to where it says January to December 2007. The sales that year averaged 41 a month, and the median average was 442,000 and change, and the average price was 568.
Okay.
Now, if you go to 2011, you'll note that the number of sales is almost unchanged, 41 a month. Median had now fallen from 442 to 223. Average is now down to 268. Now, if you go the first 5 months this year, you're going to see that sales are up. So volume is up. But don't mistake that for prices to go up.
Barely went up in value.
Median is a little higher, but average has fallen.
Wow.
And what you see when average falls, that really means the upper end is continuing to collapse. And it's because there's no buyers up there. Because everybody is losing their house, so they can't buy up. And so over time, the higher priced properties just keep coming down and down and down, and they fall into foreclosure or short sale. It is just a market, a normal and natural logical consequence of massive foreclosures and distressed sales.
And
next slide.
Okay, and I think we'll get into what's going to happen with all these foreclosed homes a little bit later.
Yes,
right?
that's one of the crusades.
Right.
Take a look at this. These are just the Bay Area counties. Right now, if you look at what I've done is I've taken each county, I've counted the number of housing units, homes in that county, and how many are upside down. That means they have a loan that's worth more than the current value of the house.
Right.
And then what percentage that upside downness is of the total homes.
Right.
And you'll note that some of the worst hit counties, well, the worst one by far is Solano.
Yeah.
Solano County has been absolutely devastated.
Nearly half.
Their median in 06 was 475,000. Their median is now 125,000, which basically means unless they stop foreclosures, every loan will either be sold short or foreclosed. There is no other way to market set these prices, because even if they give a loan mod, the banks don't want to give principal reduction. And the owner says, well, why should I still owe 500 when it's worth, 150? So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to walk away.
Wow.
And so basically, Solano County is sort of leading the edge on this nasty list. And you'll note that as an average, 18% of the homes in the Bay Area are upside down. On the state level, 21% of the homes are upside down, and it's 2 million loans. 2 million homes. So when the Attorney General says our settlement is going to, help 200,000 loans, upside down loans, I'm going, that's not even hardly 10%. Are you kidding? What about the 90% that don't get any help?
Wow.
That's the question.
Leaves a person speechless.
And I apologize for that.
No problem. It just, your head just swims, and then you think, well, what can we do? So should we go on to another slide, or I think we're still moving along here.
The question was asked, how do we ever get into this mess? What is the timeline? And we've got about 4 slides.
That's a good one, yeah.
I'd like you to go
That's
look
sort
through,
of some
and what I've done,
elementary
I've hit
stuff that we can
what
talk
I
about.
call the highlights. I told you before, it started in the 90s, and in 1991 was the first significant change of federal law that is one of the seeds of our disaster today. In 1991, go ahead and put the slide up.
It is.
Oh, okay. The
FDIC.
FDIC expanded the federal government bailout to include not just commercial banks, but investment banks, think Goldman Sachs, and insurance companies, think AIG. In 1991, this little change, an attorney for the banks slipped that change into that law. It was never discussed on the floor of either house, and it got passed. And he just said, well, it seemed like a good thing to do at the time for my clients. So you have an attorney with a vested interest and client base of banks, insurance companies, and investment banks changing our federal law without notice.
And how did they let this happen?
Well, I don't know enough about
They weren't paying
exactly.
attention?
Well, there's tons of laws. When I see how many laws are supposed to be passed in 1 year by an organization, pick any legislature, House or Senate, I am absolutely overwhelmed. There is no way they could probably even read them, much less really understand them or catch little little planted seeds like this that are specifically going to benefit the people in charge of our money at the sacrifice of the public, because that's what they did.
And nobody understands this, so we don't really pay attention to it. Or if we hear it on the news, it's just sort of like, oh, and it goes by and it's gone.
And I'm not even sure in '91 if we even had enough access to these laws and who was reviewing them. I mean, most of us are busy working for a living.
Heck yeah.
And so but you know, we are going to obviously have to step up.
Yeah.
And figure out how we're going to get a grip on this stuff. And some of these things they can do in the legislature, where they have what they call placeholder legislation. They have a name, and they've said, okay, this is going to be a law, but there's nothing in there. Or they write stuff, and then they gut and amend it. So they pull that out, put something else in, probably 5 minutes before the vote, so that nobody can review it. I mean, we've got to stop these games.
Earmarks or riders or whatever they want to call them. Yeah.
Okay, in 1995, one of the next on the timeline, Fannie Mae, and Jim Johnson is a favorite scoundrel in my book. And it comes out of reckless endangerment. She has documented what he's done and how he basically has led the entire industry into buying off the government, the Congress people, with lots and lots gobs of money for campaigns, watering down underwriting and securitizing these loans so that they could make more, the bankers themselves could net the proceeds and the benefits of doing this. It's a personal enrichment at the behest of the taxpayer and the government. And he started that, and right now, he's not been prosecuted. I'm going to be talking more about other stuff he's done. The fact of the matter is, he's now on the board of Goldman Sachs.
Right.
Next slide. In 1998, and I believe both houses of Congress were in Democratic control, and it was Clinton. And he signed the act that, if you will, defanged Glass-Steagall. It was actually called the Citigroup Relief Act because it relieved the investment banks, commercial banks, and insurance companies from this horrible, horrible law that was passed after the banks defrauded this country and caused the Great Depression. The people were so angry, they set up the SEC and they passed Glass-Steagall, which was named for the two legislators that put the act together. And basically, to summarize it, it said the banks could only be one. You could be a commercial bank and make loans. Boring. You could be an investment bank and work on Wall Street. You could be an insurance company, but you couldn't be all three.
Right.
And ever since that was passed, the banks have worked and worked and worked, passing a little rule here, a little rule there, trying to water it down, trying to break this out. In '98, they got Clinton to sign it, and they basically completely removed the prohibition from Glass-Steagall. So immediately what happened is the commercial bank could now make loans, go over and put on the investment bank hat and securitize them and make gobs of money.
Now, explain what securitize means.
I will in a minute. And then, well, they sell them as securities on Wall Street. They put them into a pool.
So it's basically gambling with money,
No, they just sell them to investors as a pool of investments.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little more about that in detail. With some pictures, it'll help.
Okay.
So they make the loan. Well, actually what they did was that they created the pools. They insured the pools. Think AIG credit default swap. And think 30 times the value because they're using the fractionalization rule. And then they ran out and they made all these loans. And of course they wanted everybody to refinance. So they started writing what I call fraudulent loans because they were fraudulent. They knew absolutely good and well that that person, whoever took out that loan that had a blow-up date, after 5 years, you know, the loan explodes, they knew for a fact that owner could not pay that.
Right.
And that is a violation of truth in lending, and they have not been held responsible for that.
And they told them that they would help with that loan before it blew up.
They're going to refinance.
That they will refinance, and
Right.
don't worry, that's just how we have to set it up for now.
Right.
And then they didn't.
Those are the only loans that were available. And they did 72 million of them
Wow.
in this country.
72 million. What percentage of, say, all the homes is that?
There are 127 million homes in this country, housing units.
So 72 million, we're talking
So
well
it
over
was a
half.
significant portion. Right
Yes.
now, a lot of them have been either paid off or foreclosed or refinanced out of those loans. My understanding is there's about 40 million of these securitized loans left, and that the loan portfolio in this country is about 50 million loans. So that means 40 million homeowners are, in the same boat. This is why I'm screaming about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next slide. After the
Okay.
Glass-Steagall, what happened in that same year? Oh, go back a slide.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. After Glass-Steagall defanged, I forgot to say, the MERS legal opinion, and by the way, this was done by the attorney firm for the banks that Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer, his head honcho over there in the Department of Justice, all worked for years for the banks, and Covington wrote the MERS legal opinion in 1998. And in 1998, that first too big to fail bailout happened. The Federal Reserve of New York bailed out a private hedge fund for $4 billion. Now, did you know about that? No. Did I? No. None of us knew about that. But in the banking industry, it was the shot that was heard around the world. And what it told every one of those bank owners and people involved in these schemes, we can do what we want, we'll get bailed out.
We'll get bailed out.
No holds barred, a head
So
full
we
steam.
can really go out and
Do what we want to do.
totally gamble.
They
and
will
if-
cover our mistakes.
Right. Wow.
Next.
Here we go.
So in 2000, we began to see a historic shift. It used to be commercial banks just made a loan, how boring, and they just sat and waited for you to pay it back.
Right.
And they may have sold it to another bank who sat and waited for you to pay it back. Nothing wrong with that. But what they did this time was said, well, we don't want to sit and wait to get it paid back, so let's securitize. So they went to Wall Street, set up these funds. They're often called mortgage-backed securities or collateralized debt obligations, CDOs, MBSs, pools. They're all words that refer to the same structured, they were actually special purpose vehicles, SPVs, structured, if you actually want to get into securities stuff.
Oh, boy.
Go to Neil Garfield, you can read all about it over there. But the fact is, they put together a fund, and they insured, they used pro forma data, and pro forma data means it's fake. They made it up, they wrote it up, and they didn't have a loan. They just said that these would be the loans that were in there. They insured them. They got the ratings agency to triple rate these securities products. They went out and sold these securities to our pension funds as investors. So whenever we say investors, think pension fund, think CalPERS, think how your pension fund in this county has been decimated by the failure of these MBSs.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And so the banks are in the middle, basically screwing us on both sides.
Wow.
And in the process, reaping humongous benefits. So they started securitization because it was extremely lucrative. They could gain all the profits for themselves on the sale of these investments. And of course, in 2001, we had a historically low interest rate because of 9/11. The Fed was afraid of the collapse of the financial industry, and so they dropped the
Right, I remember that.
interest rate down to like 1% or less.
To incentivize people
And
to...
so there was a humongous refinance and lending boom.
Yeah.
And so you combine that with these fraudulent loans, which basically said, I don't care who you are, I don't care how much you make, your payment's $1,500 a month, and I will loan you. First it was $400, then it was $500, $1,000, and then it was $600,000 for the same payment.
Wow.
Who isn't going to do that?
Right.
And so since there was no underwriting, there was no limit to how much money could be thrown at these loans, because it wasn't the bank's money, by the way. Remember, it was our pension fund money that they threw out there. And so people went and borrowed. That was the only thing they could do. And they believed what they were told.
That's the American way.
And it worked for about 5 years.
Right.
But the trouble is, the prices went up and up and up, and eventually the house value didn't climb enough for the refi. So in 07, we didn't have foreclosures. In 08, we had 23,000. Why? Because all of those people's loans exploded in 07. They could not refinance, the ones that came due in 07. And so they said, I can't pay this anymore.
But the bank basically didn't let them refinance.
That's correct.
Isn't that
They
it?
did not provide
They could have refinanced.
They could have, but they had these rules. Oh no, now we're going to go look at the rules.
Right.
And so now the house has to be worth X amount, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And of course, as the first layer, if you will, the top level layer of all of these foreclosures hit the market, and the banks, in righteous anger, these deadbeat people, just bam, foreclosed, bam, threw them on the market, bam, slapped whatever low price on it, and just crushed the next level of people whose loans became due that year. And so as values drop, more and more people are upside down, more and more people fail, more and more foreclosures. It's a cascading failure.
Wow.
So then, in the end, in 07, the next slide,
okay,
you'll see that the exploding loans led to defaults, which has began the foreclosure pandemic. It really is a pandemic.
Yeah.
And in 08, we had the foreclosures really began in earnest. And right now they're tracking the last years about 23,000 a year foreclosures, year after year after year, just in these 9 Bay Area counties. To date, the number is about 8 million foreclosures nationwide from 2008 to 2011. But the pipeline that people talk to me about, and as a broker, I get emails soliciting me to go to this webinar to list these REOs and stuff. And they're saying, we're now going to catch up. We couldn't foreclose very much last year because of this settlement thing with the Attorney General. So now we're going to ramp it up, and we're going to foreclose another 11 million. And my response to that is, if you foreclose another 11 million homes, then in the end, they will foreclose everything. Unless we stop them from doing this, there is no end. It's just a cascading failure. How does it ever end?
Right, and we seem to, one of our members went to the Board of Supervisors here in Mendocino County and tried to get them to sign on to encouraging the legislature, we wanted, to have a moratorium on foreclosures, to support the homeowners' Bill of Rights, which you're going to talk about in a little bit. And I don't remember the third thing. And they were all enthusiastic and friendly, and then just nothing's happened. Nothing has happened.
At least you got your supervisors to pay attention to. Our supervisors in Sonoma County, I've been very active down there. I mean, more active than I ever imagined I would be doing. And went out and got signatures and took them into the supervisor meetings, and they were all ready to pass our little resolution, which we'd worked on with them.
I saw that.
Until the California Association of Realtors got wind of it and wrote a letter to the board and said, we don't support that. We don't want you to support that.
Money off all the foreclosing?
It turns out that my industry is filled with people that seem to be focused mostly on selling homes. Now, I really believe that if the rank and file agents in the Association of Realtors actually knew what their representatives were doing at the state level, they might be outraged. Because it's the frontline agent that meets the homeowner who's just devastated and saying, help me, I want to keep my house, how can you do this? And who would help them sell the house as a normal seller with some equity in it if they could.
Yeah.
But the people at the state level, they evidently feel that what's most important is that the banks be stopped dual tracking short sales.
Dual tracking mean what we talked about earlier with
the loan mod.
Sure, we'll modify your loan, and meanwhile, the foreclosure department is full speed ahead.
You got it. And all the Car Association of Realtors really was pushing is, if you're going to work with us on a short sale, then you can't do the foreclosure.
Heck yeah.
But basically, when I said, because we got together in a meeting, and I said, but the problem is the people want to keep the house.
Yeah, they do.
They don't want to sell it short.
No, they don't even want to sell it short.
They want a loan mod. They want to keep the house. It was dead silence. Well, we don't, really care about that. Sorry. I mean, they don't.
We don't care about them. They're just pieces on the board.
And that's the problem,
Yeah.
because they don't understand how by doing what they're pushing for that, they're chopping off their nose to spite their face.
That's right.
Yes, it may be tougher for a short time if people can keep their houses and not sell short. So all the short sales disappear. If they stopped foreclosures, there wouldn't be bank-owned houses to sell, and there wouldn't be short sales, because the people would say, well, you're not going to take it, I'm going to keep it.
And what would real estate agents do then? Would they be pretty much hurting like?
Well, they would probably for a while. The fact is, there's lots of people that do have equity still,
Yeah.
but they just would like to have a little more equity if possible. And if they knew they didn't have to compete against these bank listings and short sales, they would list and it would be a normal sale and we could get back to business as usual. It would work itself out.
Wow. Okay.
Let's go to the next slide. A lot of people do not understand really when we talk about deeds of trust, mortgages, loans, this is how it is supposed to work. And I'm trying to use some little graphics.
This is great. These kind of simple pictures that
Yeah,
take me back to
yeah.
first grade. It works for
It does
me.
get complicated, but we have a house,
Yeah.
and that is the collateral.
Yes.
And we're going to get a loan on it. And to secure, and we use the same words like a trust deed or deed of trust and secured note or a securitization. In this case, this deed of trust, we call them dots.
Yeah.
California is a non-judicial state, and non-judicial states use dots. They use deeds of trust. And that is recorded at the county, and it connects that loan, which the borrower signed, and which once you sign it, it's now called a note. So a note and a loan are the same.
Okay.
And the borrower signs it to the lender, and then the lender records a deed of trust on the house saying that the borrower signed that loan. That's
Right.
how it's supposed to work.
Right.
Okay, next.
That's easy.
And before securitization, then the lender, it was their money. The banks would loan money, and then they would take the note. And if they didn't want to hold it for 30 years while you made your payments, they could sell it for, a discount to somebody else who would pay them for, that note. The lender would actually sign it. You see how it says it's signed by the lender. And in this case, even if they had signed it when they sold it to the securities, the MBSs, it would have been legal, but they didn't do that. So, but in the point, it used to be they would have a note, they would make a note, they would sign it, they would sell it to somebody else, duh. So then when the borrower wanted to talk to their lender, they would have gotten a notice saying, oh, well, it's not Bank of America anymore that owns this note, it's Wells. And it would be what is called a portfolio loan. It would be in their portfolio.
Yeah.
And that lender would actually have control. The credit unions do this all the time. They make portfolio loans. They usually charge higher down payment. And then they hold that note. And so if you have trouble, you call up the credit union and say, help me. And they go, oh, okay, let's see. Okay, here's your note. Let's see. What are your payments? Okay, well, let me just talk to management and we can do blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And they can modify that note because they hold it. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now, what they did, unfortunately, on the next screen, remember I told you they had a legal opinion in 1998 about the MERS. This is the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. It means we're going to register this note holder transfer in this little database that we created. And we're not going to bother recording it over at the recorder's office. So what we've got right now is we've got deeds of trust at the recorder's office, and then we have lenders that have sold these notes over and over and over and over and over. Nobody even knows. because the tracking is in MERS.
And
It's
that's
a
not open
private-
to the general public.
It's a private member-only database.
The government can't get into it?
No, this is bank-owned.
Ooh.
So next slide. So now what they've done, they did not, they put the data into MERS, but they did not sign any of these notes to the lenders. And nobody knows where these notes were supposed to be because they should have signed them to the MBSs, but they did not. And as we see down the road, this is what's caused the collapse of the financial industry.
And if I'm not getting too far ahead, every time your note changes hands, they're supposed to pay a little fee, right?
If you recorded it at the recorder's office, there would be a recording fee. That is
Right.
correct. And this is the note, not the deed of trust that's
But
changing
since
hands.
it's in MERS, they're not paying that
That is correct.
fee. Okay.
They pay $4 or something. They pay
Okay.
a transaction kind of.
Okay, but somebody...
And MERS brags about how much money they save the banks by not having to use the recorder's office.
Right, but it's costing our recorders and our states a lot of money.
And
Millions of dollars.
absolutely. And not only that, what's even worse is the very next slide. And that is, nobody can know who owns their note.
Right.
Nobody knows. It's a broken
Can't find
chain
it.
of note ownership. It's technically called an unperfected chain of title. And this is chain of note ownership title, not chain of ownership on the property title. There's two things that are being owned here. The borrower owns the property, but the notes get sold around the country and put into this MBS and that MBS. And in general, the notes have been sold anywhere from 10 to 15 times.
Wow. And now if you were able to get into MERS, you would be able to see who does hold the note?
Well, actually,
Maybe.
maybe. Yes and no, because what actually happened is there's been so much, anybody can log in, and so you have all these banks and all their people can log in and make changes, and what happened in MERS, they have not kept the benchmarks they were supposed to have kept. So you can't go back and look oftentimes at the history of where has that note been.
Wow.
You can actually, it's really been a tremendous problem, and this is often why people will say, well, they'll look at on the recorded documents and they will say, well, you know, I've got a note over here by this lender and then a note over here by this lender because something did get assigned, you know, recorded, or they've got substitute trustees. It's a mess. It's a mess. And we're going to soon see how they actually cheated when they filed the paperwork, too.
Next.
Sure. This is basically a discussion of why we call these foreclosures fraud closures. This is the heart and cycle of bank fraud, and this starts from the beginning to the end. And in the beginning, what they did, I've already said it once, they set up these special purpose vehicles, these pools, and got investors to pour money into them. They said, how could we lose? They're insured. They're AAA rated. They didn't understand that the ratings agencies had been bought off by the banks and that the insurance was credit default swaps with AIG. They just didn't understand what was going on. That was never
really
explained to them.
Bad loans that were about to
And they
default.
didn't understand there weren't any loans. So what they did was they created the pools and they sold those pools, which is technically illegal, by the way, in securities law. They sold them with nothing in them. They lied to the investors and they lied to the insurers. Next. And of course they made gobs of money by doing that. So then they got this money and they said, oh my goodness, we better go make some loans. So then they created these toxic loans that would force people back into the refinance cycle because they had raised billions of dollars, they had to get rid of it. And so they went out to the market and they created loans. Every loan was designed to fail or blow up.
And when about was this?
They started that in 2000.
Oh.
And of course, this cycle of refinance, this toxic loan refinance cycle worked for about 6-7 years until Greenberg
Greenspan.
Greenspan.
That guy.
He raised the interest rates because he saw that the economy was heating up. And he raised that a quarter point for 17 months in a row. And that stopped the balloon enough so that those people couldn't refinance. Those first people, that first layer of toxic loans defaulted, which has now just been cascading ever since. So they cheated the borrowers, and they violated every truth in lending law there ever was, because since this was not their own money, they were actually pretender lenders. So I signed a loan with Countrywide in '05. Was it Countrywide that was my lender? They said they were. They told me they were my lender, but they actually were not. It was not their money. They were using lines of credit on Wall Street from investors. And so actually when I signed, the lender was a mortgage-backed security, which completely shifts the whole picture.
Wow.
Next. So then, once they created these loans, of course, we know they put them into the MERS database. And the trouble is there's no internal controls. So if you can't control and can't track what's happening in the database, whoops. So the records are hidden. They can change these records at will. I'll never forget hearing when the first Attorney General settlement, the deal was coming out in the public. Some person down in Southern California said, "We qualify. We're going because our loan is with BVA and we're current." And she went through the list of everything. And then 2 days later, she says, "We're not with BVA anymore. Wells owns our mortgage now. How did that happen?" Well, somebody logged into MERS and just said, "Don't want to own that anymore." Boom.
And they could do that.
And that's what they do. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They cheat recording fees. They change the records at will. We're all marks. We're all marks in this game.
Right.
So the next slide shows that what they should have done was assign these loans to the MBSs. Now, MERS database actually has a pointer. It points to a MBS, but they never actually signed the loans over to the mortgage-backed securities. So what actually happened, if you go to the next slide, what normally should have happened is that they put the loans into the MBSs, which would have given money for the pooling and service agreements. You see that that little arrow pointing back to the bankers in the middle there. Yeah. It says PSA. That's the pooling and servicing agreement. And all of these special purpose vehicles, all of these pools of funds, investments, securities that our pension funds bought are governed by the pooling and servicing agreements. Period. The banks are subject to the PSAs. The banks do not own the loans. The banks do not have access to the loans. The banks simply service the loans according to the PSAs. Right. Theoretically, legally.
So
okay.
Still nobody can I log into MERS?
No.
Okay.
Well, you can access you can't log in. You can access it and type in your name and social security number to see if your loan is in MERS. But you can't log in and do anything.
They won't tell you who owns it or anything.
Well, it's supposed to come up and say who owns it, but it's not always accurate. And a lot of people know it's in there, but it doesn't show up.
And I've heard that it can change from month to month.
Of course. It can change by the minute. So what they did, though, in the next slide, we'll see how they actually did not do. They didn't assign the loans to the MBSs. They didn't put them in the long-term MBSs. What they did was they pointed to them from MERS, and then they double used the notes as collateral for short-term banking lines of credit. So what they did there was they cheated the IRS. Because they actually, when they set up these special purpose vehicles, they said to the IRS, these are long-term hold, and so the taxes should be passed through, no taxes. And now, so they committed tax fraud. So now they didn't ever put the loans in there. So this has meaning, and we'll get to it in a couple of pictures. So they were making gobs and gobs of money on Wall Street as short-term lines of credit. But you'll see that in 2008, down there at the very bottom of the little screen, it says violated pooling and servicing agreements. In 2008, the investors in the Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns pools discovered there were no loans backing these pools, and they had a run on the bank. They had billions of dollars that every investor on the planet wanted back. They had a bank run. And that's why overnight, Bear Stearns and Lehman virtually, they were bankrupt, worthless, and sold for $1, to Goldman
Really?
Sachs. I mean,
Right.
that's an exaggeration. But that's what happened, is that the investors discovered this fraud, and they had a run on the banks. Next.
Wow.
Now, what actually happened, since they did not assign the notes correctly into the pools are very strict about when you can put money in, when you can transfer collateral into it. And you have to transfer the collateral into it before it closes. And all of these funds were closed-end funds. And they closed whenever the loans were made. So, if you got a loan in 06, it was closed in 06, somewhere in there. And yet, your loan was never put in there. So now when you stop paying, and they said, uh-oh, this person stopped paying. Well, that should have been in that pool in 06, but now it's 2010. So tell you what, we'll just create a document that says it was put into there. And so they create fraudulent assignments far past the close dates with robo-signatures. And here's a robo-signature. Linda Green is the classic one. There's links with 60 minutes. You go to the next slide and you'll see the 20 signatures of Linda Green.
Right. Look at that.
And what these banks did, they hired foreclosure mills, attorney firms, by the way, that hired, people, baggers, grocery store people, they're just people, for $10 an hour, pick a number, to come in and sign someone else's name on documents that are now recorded in our recorders' offices throughout this country. This is fraud. And
Flat out.
every securitized loan that these banks did, they had to use fraud to get control of, to foreclose. So every owner that lost their home to foreclosure fraudulently deserves treble restitution.
Heck yeah.
The trouble is, nobody's going after them, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right. And I know that's the big question. That's the big question in our Occupy group.
Exactly.
Tom, who's really on it, is saying,
Exactly.
why has nobody been prosecuted? Why?
We'll see
We'll
exactly
get to that,
why.
huh?
Here's an example of the illegally assigned loans. You'll note that the assignment, I pulled this out of an article, The Remix Have Failed. That's real estate mortgage investment conduits. It's an article linked to my website, but it shows each place that they have defrauded. They put it into the fund way past the close date. That's fraud. Tax fraud, loan fraud. Whole thing is
So
fraudulent.
that's up here.
Yeah.
Closing date, October 30th, 2006.
Right. And then it was put into the MBS in June 9, 2009. Oh, and then it was notarized August 20. And they now have lists of known robo-signers. So they know that these signatures are fraudulent, including the notary signatures. They would throw the notary stamps around the table. It's been described to me. They'd sit in a big round table, and everybody'd sit around and say to each other, oh, there's going to be a show about this someday, as everybody's signing Linda Green.
Right, and then taking the stamp and
sharing
stamping
the notary
each one.
stamp.
Wow.
Next.
I know, you laugh or you are going to cry.
Well, yeah, this is the problem. So in the end, they've recorded false documents at the recorder's office, and this is why both audits that we have on record now,
Right.
O'Brien over in Massachusetts in May 2011 and Phil Ting in San Francisco just recently, April I think, May or April, did these audits, independent audits of the foreclosure documents, and both audit firms came up with 84% of the foreclosures were fraudulent.
Right.
Well, that tells you that 84% of the foreclosures were on securitized loans.
Right.
I mean, It's pretty straightforward.
And we figured, you know, we investigated that, you know, with our board of supervisors. What's the chance of us getting an audit here? And he said there's just no money for it.
Exactly.
And they don't have the staff for it.
Exactly.
But the information is there.
And the
we
fact
can
is,
bet that the same organizations are operating up here that are operating down in the Bay Area. They didn't suddenly put on halos. We can bet
exactly.
that it's just as fraudulent here as it is anywhere else.
Exactly.
In the
The recorder in Butte County, for example, said to me, they're recording the same stuff here as in San Francisco,
That's
so
right.
84% of ours are the same.
So we've got to.
Why do we need to pay for an audit?
But the good thing is that information's not going to go away.
That's correct. It is on record. If we could just get somebody to use it.
If we can afford to either find the time and the training or find the money.
I have some
public
training
will.
to show how to look at the documents, what a fraudulent assignment looks like. And the key is, even with a fraudulent assignment, I mean, I asked the Butte County DA, he's pretty gung-ho about let's get these guys.
Yeah.
And even he says, well, shouldn't it be the Attorney General? Well, actually, it should be Eric Holder. Okay, the Department of Justice should be doing this. But we already know that they are part and parcel of it. They worked at the firm that set this stuff up. They are not going to prosecute their clients.
No.
And so when
They're
you
golf
take
buddies.
Yeah, when you take the Fed out, then you take the attorney generals, and the attorneys general are saying, we just need some money. I mean, you know, we're trying to fight back against the banks. So the people, the organizers, you, me, we've gone to somebody local like the DA and say, well, what can you guys do? And I've basically said to them, how many fraudulent documents is it going to take?
Yeah.
If I bring you in 10, will you do something? And he said, well, and this was, I chatted with them and the group out in Occupy Butte, out in Chico, that in about 3 weeks, so that looks like it's about the week of the 27th of this month, all of the district attorneys and the attorney general are getting together to discuss this problem, because foreclosures are number one. Well, it's about time. It should have been number one about 3 years ago, but better late than never, and better to act temporarily, stop it, do something, stop them temporarily, and then you'll discover that it isn't going to hurt as bad as everybody is saying. I believe that part of the hesitation is the fact that this is such a systemic problem. It is so huge. I'm talking 8 million people defrauded already. We're talking 11 million homes. We're talking 40 million of these fraudulent loans. We're talking billions of dollars already paid to AIG for credit default swaps. You know who got that money, right? That was Goldman Sachs and the banks that got that insurance payout at 100 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
Because they were in the room. Goldman Sachs was in the room when Geithner settled that with AIG. So we already know the fix is in for them, and we're on the out. So we have to step up and, you know, get our boots on the ground.
Yep.
So the last picture in this cycle, the next slide. What you end up with when you've got a whole level of cheating, and they've now fraudulently created paperwork that is now on record in our recorder's office.
Yay.
And what they basically do is stealing the homes. That's why I call it stealing our homes. They are stealing our houses. And we find it very difficult to fight back. And because, remember I said they tell you have to default 60 days?
Yep.
That's because in 60 days, the insurance on the pool pays off on a defaulted loan. So in 60 days, you become a deadbeat, the owner does. The pool is paid off, whatever the insurance pays, 70, 80 cents on the dollar. So our investor pension funds take a hit, 20, 30% hit. So they're going, ah.
Yeah.
The bank goes, gotcha. Because now they can do whatever they want. And when they sell it, they can keep the money.
So that's how they're making money off foreclosures.
And fees.
And fraud,
they have tons of fees. That they have wholly owned asset managers, wholly owned field assets that run around and manage all these properties. The wholly owned foreclosure auctioners, the people that go to the auction and read off all the foreclosures at the courthouse steps. Those are bank-owned companies. The banks own the appraisal management companies. The banks have created such an insane control over our real estate market at every level. And it used to be appraisers would get $350 an appraisal. Now appraisers get $125. The appraisals cost $500, and the banks net the spread.
Now, is this why, because they have created such a huge industry, a huge society pretty much to defraud the public, is this why perhaps people are so reluctant to go after them legally?
People are not reluctant.
No?
People are coughing up millions of dollars in lawsuits. Just in Sonoma County last year, we happened to run a search on this. Over 1,500 lawsuits were filed in Sonoma County, with one of the defendants being a bank or MERS. So the homeowners are pouring money into trying to keep the house.
Right.
The fact is, in California, pretty much nothing works. You may delay it. You may, file bankruptcy, will postpone an auction, but it won't stop a foreclosure. It may wipe off a second, and if the value's fallen enough, and if your normal first payment is good enough, you may be able to keep the house. I mean, it'd help a couple people.
Well, I meant when I said people being reluctant, I meant pretty much attorney general type people. The
our
legal
elected
people.
officials?
Yeah, why aren't they? I mean, I understand that they are in bed with these people, and maybe that's the answer right there. But it's such a huge organization. If they end up having to pay for all this fraud, end up having to do jail time, if you pretty much decimate the banks, are they truly too big to fail? Will it create more problems?
I was just told that Frontline had a little episode about what went on when this first hit the fan in 08. And Geithner was in the room with Obama, and there was someone else, she didn't remember who, and I haven't had a chance to look that show up. And the other person was saying, off with their heads. The bankers were there, and they said, chop their heads off. Yep. And Geithner said, oh, no, it'll work out. Let's just bail them out, and things will be fine. So we know which way they went. To our demise.
So it seems as if they should not be allowed, when we're talking about regulation, to have their fingers in so many levels of the business also. When you're saying the management and the auctioneers, et cetera, all that stuff you listed off that I can't even remember.
I know, it's just
the banks
massive.
Have all created. They shouldn't be allowed to create these enormous octopi.
All these subsidiaries that are controlling everything.
Right.
The fact of the matter is they're all caused because the banks make fees out of the investors. So in other words, when they foreclose and they have a property and it costs them X amount to manage that property and X amount to sell it and X amount to do this and that, that all comes out of net proceeds from the mortgage-backed security. They all get a ding. And so again, the banks are in the middle making the money while everyone on the outside is getting pummeled. So if we stopped foreclosures, those institutions would disappear. They wouldn't need them. And if we broke the banks back up, like in Glass-Steagall, said, okay, you can make loans, but that's it.
That's it.
You can go to Wall Street, but that's it.
Yeah.
And you can do insurance, but that's it. Then that would also break up a lot of this collusion. And I personally believe we need to pass rules that say you cannot securitize our loan. It's illegal.
Agreed.
We must stop this securitization. There is just no way to control it.
No.
And the only people it enriches are the middlemen, and the potential for systemic failure is just too great.
Right. All right. Shall we move on?
Yeah. You were talking about if someone faces default, what does that look like?
What do you do? Yeah.
What does that look like? In California, on a deed of trust, non-judicial state is what I'm going to be discussing. And as we go through this timeline, I will mention in a judicial state, Florida, New York, New Jersey, they have a court process. They have to go to court. So we all say, oh, lucky them. A lot of them don't do it. They could make use of that.
Does it just cost them a lot of money to go to court
Not
and they
a
end
whole
up
lot.
losing? No.
No, I think people are intimidated. They don't know what to do. Many people are in just denial. They just don't even want to think about it. Just
Right.
go away. I just want to move out. And that's what a lot of people do.
Well, you're up against these slick bank lawyers, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah, who have lied in court
Right.
repeatedly and told these judges, yes, Your Honor, we own these notes. That's why we're foreclosing. And then come to find out, they didn't. They had to fraudulently fake the ownership for the notes. And so the judges are really upset. Oh, gee, you lied to the judge.
Yeah.
And yet they
called
still,
perjury.
but they still have not done class action lawsuits against all the foreclosure attorney mills, the foreclosure mills. These are attorney firms that are running these foreclosure mills, that are hiring these robo-signers, that are completely at fault. They should lose their licenses. They should be imprisoned.
Yeah.
And this should send a message around the world that if you're going to do fraud, you're going to get punished.
Right.
So in the first place, when a person defaults, either they're told to default so they can get a loan mod, or their loan exploded, or they lost their income, or their home value is down so low they just decide they're going to walk strategic default. This is what starts that process. Next.
Okay.
And so in the first 30 days, you can expect a credit ding. They'll ding your credit. Next. They're going to hound you on the phone and call you mercilessly, at least for 60 days. And what you're going to discover is that they will use, and in the loan mod process also, I've talked to people that know what they're hearing, and it is called domination and degradation techniques. These techniques are taught to the people that do loan modifications with the public, and they are made, they use them to make the owner cave in and coerce them into agreement. I've got a psychologist who's going to be writing on that soon. Going through a loan mod, he knows all about it. Next. From the 60 days to we have no idea when. It may be a month, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. In a judicial state, it could be as long as 3 years before they file a notice of default. Because in a judicial state, in the first 21 days, you have a chance to go to court and respond. You can hire an attorney to do that for you. It's not very expensive. And I've been told your average attorney can delay the foreclosure at least a year just with that process. So besides other techniques. So in a non-judicial state, however, we just have basically a very short process. And we don't know when it starts. So I call it limbo land. You stopped making the payments. You haven't gotten a notice of default. Whatever.
But you're now a deadbeat, right?
Now you're a deadbeat. Absolutely. You're a deadbeat.
Yeah.
Join the club.
Right.
And not only that, you just have to wait. And a lot of people find that stressful. I say take a deep breath, just relax. Don't fret about it and save the money. Save whatever money you can, because in the end, you will probably lose the house and have to relocate.
Yeah.
But you might as well relocate with money than without money. So the next. At some point in time, back up one. At some point in time, they're going to hit you with a notice of default.
Okay.
That's in this state, non-judicial deed of trust state. That's when the clock starts counting. It's 90 days. 90 days. And then after 90 days, that's the pendings turn into auctions. You have a 20-day, they have to advertise in the paper. Papers make a lot of money with these ads. And then on the 21st day, they can auction at the courthouse steps. And that's when the first auction date is set. So that's when people start calling me. What am I supposed to do
Then
next?
it's a little too late, huh?
Well, no, now you have, strategies. And so the first thing that a lot of people will do is they try a loan mod. Sometimes they'll do a lawsuit, but the first thing they usually try is a loan mod. And this is where, I'm reminding you that the banks get paid. It was $1,000. Obama increased it to $3,000 each time you apply. So the banks have no incentive to modify the loan. They just want to have you apply. And then they'll deny, and then they'll say, apply again.
Maybe we'll, yeah.
And so it's not uncommon. The people will talk to me and they'll say, oh, I've applied 5 times. I've been denied 5 times. I keep applying. They keep telling me to apply. So I apply. Oh, and now I got a loan mod. And so now, what do you think of this loan mod? So then we start looking at that. But again, the legality, I've had attorneys advise me that since the banks do not own the loans that they are modifying, and they are not following the pooling and servicing agreements for that loan modification, that even if a borrower signs a new, which basically is a new loan, if you sign a modification, it's a new loan, now directly with that lender, even if you sign that, there's no guarantee that the investors in the pools couldn't come and take the house back. It's stolen property.
Really?
So that he was advising some actions to take to protect yourself. So in other words, it's a humongous legal nightmare, a mess.
Who would the investors be?
Pension funds. The pension funds. And the pension funds have been suing the banks. And the banks are now putting their mortgage servicing units into bankruptcy.
But the pension funds are the people, and the people are, they've got people pitted against each other then.
Of course. It's the investor returns against the homeowner who's supposed to be paying those returns.
And we should be united.
Exactly, and I have a solution. Get the banks out of the middle and have the owners pay the funds. I mean, it's really pretty straightforward and simple. The next thing that they can do is a short sale. Often they'll say, they just give up. They say, whatever, I can't afford the house anyway, we want to move, whatever. I lost my job, so they go to a short sale. Often in these short sales, there are pretty harsh terms. So in other words, the buyer of the short sale has to notarize that they won't rent it to the owner, or they won't ever sell it back to the owner. I mean, these are stupid things.
Yeah, really.
What should the lender care? But it's almost
really.
like tit for tat. Next. And then the next thing that often is done is lawsuits. Temporary restraining orders sometimes can be probably the most effective if the lender servicer did not do the California declaration correctly in the state of California. And you can go to my website and read up on that. But most suits, most pleas do not work. They may delay it, they may postpone it because they're in lawsuit, but not necessarily. I've got contacts who've said, I'm in the middle of a lawsuit and they're foreclosing, they took my house back. I'm still living there. So they still stay there, but they've lost the house to foreclosure.
And has anybody gotten their house back?
Occasionally, there have been some reversals of foreclosures. Typically, what we see is a huge Occupy pressure, like Occupy Bernal in San Francisco. And it's not just the Occupy, but it's ACE and it's San Francisco Housing. There's several organizations, and then they all get together for one person. Well, that's great for that one person.
Right.
But, it is just an incredible usage of manpower, and most of the people don't get that.
We've been talking about doing that. If we find somebody who's losing their house, should we go and occupy their property? And
well, this is all so late in the game. We need to snip off foreclosures. If we stop foreclosures, we don't have to rescue them.
Right.
See.
No, I hear you.
And the last thing, in the event that you have an auction date, the one effective way of postponing that is bankruptcy.
Right.
It still does not prevent the foreclosure. It could give a few people some relief and help them keep their houses. But in the end, in California, currently, most strategies fail. And it's because our foreclosure laws are just wide open. This is what we've talked about. I could give you a blank notice of default form and teach you how to fill it in so it looks correct. And if you were inclined to, you could mail it into the recorder's office and they would record it on that property.
And for a fictitious property?
No, for a real property.
Oh.
In fact, people have been saying, well, let's file notice of default on, Wells Fargo CEO's house. Let's file notice of default on all these people's houses. And the fact is, if the recorder calls themselves, we're just a vessel, we just do what we're told. And so if we get a notice of default in, we open it, it's always mail. By the way, it's always mail fraud here coming along. They've mailed all this fraudulent stuff through the mail.
That's federal laws.
So Louisiana, by the way, is suing the banks and MERS, 17 banks and MERS, under the RICO statute for fraud because they've used the mail, and it's a conspiracy to keep away from the transfer fees and the recording fees. So The point is, there are ways to sue them if we wanted to, if we could find the courage and get someone to do that. But in the meantime, the recorder opens this up, looks at it, it looks right. And so they record it. And there's
and it's done fraudulently.
It's
exactly what they've been doing.
Exactly.
So we could do that. We could sign a foreclosure note on the president of Wells Fargo, and it would be fraudulent. And if we were caught, we could go to jail.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Oh, bad you.
Yeah, right. But not them.
Exactly. So in the end, next slide, what we face is a foreclosure auction. Next. It goes to the courthouse steps, and either someone buys it or often the bank takes it back. And so eventually the owner is contacted, usually in about 2 weeks, with a cash for keys offer. And that is some agent knocks on the door and says, okay, I now am in charge of managing this house, and this is the offer that the bank gives you. We're going to give you $1,500, get out in 10 days.
And was that what got raised up to $2,000 recently also? They said they'll give you $2,000.
Oh, no, that's in the Attorney General settlement. That was a $2,000 figure for people who had been wrongly foreclosed. Yeah. $2,000.
$2,000.
And now Governor Brown is saying, well, we're not going to give that on to the homeowners. We're going to keep it to help balance the budget. So I'm not sure if that's legal, but whatever. So the cash for keys is when the bank tries to get the owner out.
Right. They're offering them $1,500
yeah,
or something.
Pick a number. And I just want to make clear that in general, my understanding is most of these agents are given $4,000, and they can keep whatever they don't give to the homeowner. So I'm just telling you that push for $7,500, push for $10,000, and 90 days.
Yeah.
And what the agent will do is say, oh, you got to talk to the lender. Fine, that's who you want to be talking to anyway. And just berate these people. It's now a fight. It's a battle, and whoever can, is the strongest is going to win. And oftentimes people will get $7,500 for 90 days. You ought to be able to get that out of them.
And even that's
and in the end, you
situation.
have to move out.
Right.
So in the end, and you don't get that money until you move out.
Right.
It's just really awful. Because now they're pitting the agents against the homeowners. I mean, it's just really awful. And so the end is you end up moving out. And a lot of people, the last slide, you lose the house.
Yep.
And this is what I've been so upset about, because when you look at the numbers, and research now proves that I'm right, and that is the owner is the person who would pay the most for the property to stay there.
Right.
So if you sold the house short to the owner,
Right.
you would get X. If you modified the loan, they probably won't even stay. But if you sold it short, you get less. The investors get less for the house, and when they foreclose, the investors get the least. The investors, the funds,
are losing out.
They want the people to stay. They want the most they can get, but the banks make the most money foreclosing. So that's what happens. We get booted out. The pension fund loses the most.
And the homeowner loses.
And the homeowner's gone. It has to be a renter now for 3 years. Has lost all their cash. A lot of these people took money out of their 401ks
Right.
for their down payments. Right. It's all gone.
Yep.
You've been talking about corrupt connections. This is why aren't people prosecuted?
Right.
And this is the next slide. The connections are corrupt, and I've already mentioned that Eric himself and Lanny, top guy at the DOJ, have been partners for years with Covington and Burling. It's the biggest law firm in the DC area, and their major clients are banks. Covington is the one that wrote the MERS opinion. So these are banker insiders. These are their attorneys that are running our Department of Justice.
And what is the MERS opinion?
That is that it is legal, and that it would work, and that
before it was instated.
And it would hold up as an entity in the process of, managing the ownership and transition of the notes, and if it ever happened, the foreclosure. And that was the legal opinion. Obviously, judges have disagreed. And so in 8, 9, and 10, different states, different judges said, "Pooh, MERS absolutely cannot foreclose." That's when you started having robo-signing. They said, well, if we can't use MERS to foreclose, how are we going to get ownership of these properties? Because they're in the pools and we're operating under the pooling and servicing group. Just fake it. And so they just faked it. It's unbelievable, but that's what they did. They did, and they're getting away with it. Okay, so then the next level of people at the federal level that might be of some help would be Geithner, Geithner and DeMarco. DeMarco is the head of the Federal Housing Finance Association, who is in charge now, the conservator of Fannie and Freddie. And instead of winding those agencies down, he's ramping them up. He's making even tougher, more securitized investments with people's loans. So he's completely under Johnson in how to make more money for yourself. Geithner, of course, is Goldman Sachs' revolving door. Donilon is Goldman Sachs working with Jim Johnson, and Donilon and Jim worked with Goldman Sachs to defraud the public and the taxpayer with Fannie Mae. Goldman Sachs explained and showed Jim, this is all recorded in Reckless Endangerment, don't quote me, go look at Gretchen's book. Jim and Goldman worked together to do off-balance sheet bookkeeping like Enron. And so the returns looked better than they actually were. And where's the prosecution?
Right.
And Fannie and Freddie are on that, they're the insurers. So is it any wonder they need like $39 billion every quarter? Because whenever we default those 60 days,
yep,
the insurance pays the fund.
Yep.
Guess who pays? Fannie, Freddie, AIG.
Right.
Guess who we're bailing out?
Them.
Yeah, taxpayer.
And we pay it.
Yeah.
They are funded by us, right?
Yeah. Now, here's the next point I wanted to make on the corrupt connections. The fraud, bank fraud, caused the Great Depression and the current financial crisis.
Yep.
And the Justice Department has issued a directive that they will not prosecute bank fraud.
When was this handed down?
I have to look that up. You asked me this question yesterday,
recent.
so I'll have the article. I'll send it to you. I'm just absolutely outraged, and that fraud has now become a bank business model.
Department, is that Justice Department? Is that DOJ?
DOJ.
So it's these guys who are in bed with all of these guys.
Exactly.
Of course they said that.
Of course.
But it's just so amazing that, I guess it's because our society is so complicated and there's so many things going on that you just hear this stuff and it's just like, oh, that's horrible, and then it's gone because you got to go to work tomorrow.
I know.
And so it's too much.
And I keep trying to get somebody at Fannie to listen to my solutions. Yeah, that's going to work. And this is the trouble. The real solutions don't want to be heard. I can't be the first one to have some ideas that would work.
No.
But obviously the things that they are still putting in place and doing, it's insane. And if they would just listen, I could fix this problem. We could solve this. We could, and it would work for the pension funds. It would work for the homeowners. It would even actually probably work for the banks. But they wouldn't make as much money.
They wouldn't make as much money.
Yeah. What?
Gosh, too bad. But that's what we're all talking about here. We're all talking about redistributing the wealth a little bit so that everybody benefits, not just.
Actually, it's just reenacting the laws that we have in place. We have these laws in place. They are not being followed. And we are not getting the prosecutions that we need as the owners, as the public, as the people of this country. And so...
Well, it should be illegal for Eric Holder and Lenny Brewer to have anything to do with the people that they are supposed to be investigating and possibly prosecuting. They should. That is obviously called conflict of interest, right?
Absolutely.
That's why judges are supposed to recuse themselves in court trials. So that's the thing that gets me is like, Obama's got all this, stuff going on, and his chief of staff and all these people are all, in bed with the banks and their former
His
bank
chief of
heads and-
staff, Jacob
This guy Lou, right.
was one of the key people in a department that bet against these mortgage-backed securities
It
as they
should be
fell in value.
illegal for him
They
to
already knew
hold-
they were going to fall.
Right,
They set them up to
right,
fall.
yeah.
So now we're going to bet against them so we can crank more money out of the market.
It should be illegal for him to hold a position in the government if he's that close.
Oh, okay, so
I
here's
just believe-
here's the question, and here's the problem, because people will say to me, "Yeah, but this is fraudulent," and they shouldn't be able to do that. And I go,
Right.
right. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to insist that they stop?
Right.
And that's the problem. I just see these tanks running down the street, and they're just crushing the cars every which
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And we're saying, "Whoa, this is a highway for cars. Get off!" How are you going to stop it?
Right.
And that's the problem. When you have all of these vested interest people in the pockets, I mean, I'm sure they're profiting.
Yeah.
How do we as the people get enough leverage? And that's why I still say what I said in the beginning. We have to have 1 million homeowners, boots on the ground, marching on these institutions and insisting that they throw these people out, that Holder and Brewer recuse themselves,
Yes.
get special prosecutors that are not connected to the banks, follow the law,
Right.
pass this legislation
Yeah.
to break these
Yeah.
cartels, because they're just a cartel.
Right. That's all
And
it
they
is.
own the guns too.
Yep. Wow. Have we got more slides here?
Well, real quick, I know it's getting late, but
Okay.
the 5 Crusades, I just wanted to touch.
Okay.
As I've been analyzing and researching this issue, it has helped me to break up the battle in this whole mess into 5 battlefronts, if you will, crusades. One is to just simply stop foreclosures.
Yep.
Stop them. Make the banks prove they have the authority to foreclose, because we know they don't. And what is it going to take? Can we change this foreclosure law? Well, that's being fought against by the Association of Realtors. I don't know if we can change it. I don't know what it's going to take to get enough leverage this is at the state level of our own Congress, to protect Californians and their homes. Would finding fraud at the recorder's office help? I don't know. I can tell you how to do it. We can find all the fraud in the world, but if nobody's going to do anything with it,
Doesn't
it's a
matter.
waste of time.
Doesn't matter.
So I'm not real sure. This is a battle, and in this battle there is a march, though, a foreclosure moratorium march in Sacramento.
On June 25th?
June
I wanted
25th.
to ask you about that.
Yep, 10 to 3. You can go to my website, look at coming events. It's listed right there, and a little flyer and stuff, and where it's going to be at the Capitol steps.
Okay, well, we'll be putting this on our website
Yes.
too. So that's June 25th at the Capitol steps, and you want everybody, homeowners especially, to gather there. And what are we going to see if we go there and we pile out of our cars? What's going to go on?
They've got a roster of speakers.
Okay.
I'll be speaking. They'll have people that are being foreclosed or trying to fight their foreclosure speaking, volunteers.
Yep.
Some people aren't comfortable with that, and others are just outraged and willing to speak anywhere, anytime.
That's right, like you.
And other speakers, I'm not sure what that roster is, but there will be speakers, and we really hope to have as many people as this needs to be newsworthy. We need to start creating waves, sound waves that can resonate with other cities and other states, because I'm telling you, I had somebody from New York email me today. I had somebody from Pennsylvania email me last week. Everybody is saying the same thing and in the same boat. Doesn't matter if it's judicial or non-judicial.
matter.
They're losing their houses. They're being dual-tracked. They're being lied to by the bankster. They got a fraudulent loan. The bank has no authority to foreclose, and it's foreclosing anyway. It's the same old stuff, and we just have to stop it.
So, I mean, the fact that people are emailing you or calling you from other states, from the East Coast, from wherever, is a little scary, because I'm very impressed by how much you know and how well you speak and how you can put it out there. But there has to be plenty of other people in the country who could do this, and it's got to happen. So how can we motivate people enough to, it's hard for me to follow all this, and you just laid it out to me in very simple terms that I'm understanding a little bit. But
Right.
as you see, most of your workshops, most of the people, they start glazing over. Their heads start spinning, and they say, I've got to think about this.
Oh, yeah.
How can we get enough people out there? Because I know you can't do this by yourself.
I know. I really believe that, and I've been saying, we need to kick it up a notch. I need to be speaking and having a forum that is nationwide. We need, because then people that have, I know there must be people that can grasp more what I'm saying. I know there are.
There's plenty
but
of them.
we've got to get those people to contact me
Yeah.
so that we can coordinate,
Yeah.
so that they can go out to their radio stations and their Occupy groups and
Right.
their state legislatures and other activist groups to get them trained and motivated, because I firmly believe from the beginning that if the owners really understood what was happening and how they were being cheated, they would be as outraged as I am. But being outraged, you're going to have to do a little bit of activism. I mean, you're going to have to do something.
Yep. Well, I'm as outraged as you are, but I'm not even a homeowner at present.
Well, and I'm
And
telling
I'd
you,
like to do something about
the
this.
renters are outraged.
Yep.
Because I had some guy in Fresno. I was over there doing a teach-in, and he comes to me and he says, I'm just a poor student, and I'm going to have to be sleeping under the bridge because rents keep rising.
Rents are
Because
horrendous.
homeowners are kicked out. Home values slide. Investors buy them. They jack the rents. Homeowners have to be renters now. So when you've got years worth of purchasers, what I mean is, for example, in Sonoma County, that I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
They sell about 4,800 homes a year.
Yep.
They have over 9,000 families locked out of buying.
Right.
So that's almost 2 years worth
Right.
of
Right.
home sales. So when you take that many owners and say, okay, we're playing this game of musical chairs, you're over here. You sit on the sidelines. And we have all these empty chairs, so then they pile them up over here. They don't even list them. So now they want to sell them in bulk. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And so they keep shrinking the game. So you have these buyers and these homes, but you have all these people over here. They got to live someplace. And so they come into the rental market. Well, a lot of them have more net worth or more resources than the poor students.
Than the guy coming out of college.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so this brings me to actually my last question on the list, and that is, you talked about us becoming a renter nation. So describe that strategy that as a result of all these foreclosures that they're gobbling up. What is that going to do?
Let's
Are we
skip real
skipping?
quick.
Okay.
Yeah, the next page is just, there's 5.
Shall
we got to
continue?
stop foreclosures. We have to keep owners in their homes.
All right, the 5
Next
crusades,
one.
let's consider. Yep.
You can look at my website and read these up.
Yep.
We need attorneys. We need 1 million attorneys because we have 40 million homeowners. Each attorney can have 40 clients, and we need to get them trained on how they can actually file lawsuits to keep these homes or get loan mods for these people. We've got to figure that out.
In court against
We've
these
got to figure that out.
sharks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the next, this is what we're now talking about, is the hedge funds. Because Fannie and Freddie and the banks, I do believe they really don't know. They've gotten into a mess and they don't know how to get themselves out. I really think so.
You think?
I do. Because they've just been doing what they were supposed to do, they thought. Okay, deadbeats, foreclose, sell.
Yeah.
Except now we're in the 5th year, and now they've got all these foreclosures, and I call it like a reservoir. They have actually, like Fannie and Freddie alone have 1 million vacant homes
right.
sitting in the
Right.
country. They don't want to list them because they're afraid if they list them, prices will fall. What they didn't understand in 2010, in 9 it stopped, and what I've done is I've counted the numbers in all these counties. And at first, in 08, we had lots of foreclosures and very few short sales. And then in 09, we had less foreclosures and more short sales. 10 and 11, we only had 14% foreclosures and we had 35% shorts. So what the banks never planned on is that the owners would say, why go to foreclosure? I'll just sell short. So now the short sales compete with the bank-owned property. So even though they've held back their homes they foreclose, prices keep falling because you have 50% of the market is distressed. And so they didn't understand. So the short sales were an unexpected problem for them. And so now they have all these homes, and they're going, oh, we don't want to list them because it'll push the prices down further. So how are we going to get rid of them? Well, instead of doing what would be appropriate, and that is sell it back to the owner.
Right. So yep.
Give them a loan that they qualify for, even if they lost it last year.
Yeah.
In other words, sell it short,
to the owner.
To the owner. And so then you stop the rental pressure, and the owner gets his house back. I mean, come on. And it's at a right market price.
Right.
But no, we can't do that. So they're saying, well, let's just sell them in bulk. And so they dream up this, I don't know who dreams this stuff up. They say, it's a mind-boggling
Criminals.
to me. Okay, so they said, we want to sell them at, 100,000 homes or 2,000 homes or 500,000 homes at a time, at a whack.
Yeah.
They want to sell 200,000 homes to one entity.
Now, who might this be?
Oh, Buffett, a hedge fund, China, Saudi Arabia.
Now they've got 200,000 homes.
Now,
what do they do
but
with
the
them?
trouble is and I wrote an email to Fannie Mae just this morning, and I said, cease and desist, because what you're going to do is that you are going to you're going to fix the market imbalance. The owners are here, and the former owners are down here,
yep.
and the hedge funds, and now these massive owners are going to be able to control our real estate market. In other words, just think about it. Let's say in Ukiah that somebody bought 1,000 homes,
Yeah.
and they decided they were going to rent them. So that's fine. So now they have the rentals. And let's say that owner decided that I'd like some more money. And so 30 days notice, rent goes up $500 a piece.
Yeah.
So 1,000 homes go up $500 a month. Now, what are those owners going to do? Where else are they going to go rent?
Right.
This market kingmaker
Right.
now owns the market.
Right.
And they will crank it for all it's worth.
Yep.
Trust me.
Yep.
They got into it for the
Of course
money.
they will.
And
so then you're just gonna...
don't think they're going to use that local agent to list that house. Are you kidding? They'll have their own agents. They'll list the houses
Right.
themselves, and they'll
Right.
list them whenever they jolly well please.
And
so we risk losing our competitive normal market where our
Right.
normal people in the country can buy and sell a home and build wealth for the future with normal appreciation, and that'll be gone.
And once, and I think I heard this on your video too, once this entity has this huge group of homes in their possession, as the value of the homes comes up, they're making all that.
They
They're
will
getting
net
all
the
of that
appreciation.
appreciation.
Right now.
And not homeowners and not our economy. Right?
Because Fannie, Freddie, and the banks will not sell these vacant foreclosures back to home owners,
Yeah.
which they must do. We must make them do that.
Yeah.
Because they're not, then those homeowners are probably forever out because they can't get a loan for 2 or 3 years, if ever. They'll be renters, and it's usually the 40s and up. So it's
Yep.
they're bankrupting the baby boomer generation is really what they're doing.
Yep.
And
Locking out the young
and
folks.
the houses right now, the values are below what is called, what you would call income value. That's why they make such good rentals. If you look at, now I'm an investor, and I've done these analyses more times than I care to count, but the fact is, when I have always called it a true value, but it basically boils down to an appraised income value approach. If you have a house and it's worth $100,000, or let's say it's priced at $100,000, the cost of ownership right now for an FHA loan is approximately $650 per 100,000. That's what it takes. You have to put a little down, and there's a little bit of play in there, but it's a number you can work with. So if the rent is $650 for that property's income value based on the current loan market is $100,000.
Okay.
So right now we have homes in many, many, many areas that are selling for $100,000 or less, but the rents are $1,500. So what that means is at 1,500, the value, the true value, the income value of that home should be 250,000.
Should go up.
Should be 250,000.
Yep.
But you can buy, you're buying these assets at a discount. So when the market eventually returns to normal, it will, because eventually they'll either foreclose everything or we stop the foreclosures, one or the other.
One or the other.
And so in the end, then real sales will start to take place. More people will be able to buy because it's been years since they lost a house. And those values will rise rather quickly to their income value, whatever because if the renter is paying $1,500 and he could buy a house for $250 and still pay $1,500, then why wouldn't he buy?
Right. But will these entities let go of these houses? Will they actually be available for sale, or will they just hang on to them?
We have no way of knowing.
Make just a boatload of money on rents and just be
That's right.
be rental lords.
Exactly. So if we sell these off to funds, we run the risk of forever losing
Never seeing
whole
these things.
swaths of our market.
Yeah.
And have lost control
Yep.
over it.
Yep. This should scare everybody.
One of the values, one of the innate features and treasures of this golden egg is that it's been completely fractionalized. You own a home, he owns 2 houses. That person owns 5 houses. That person's a renter. But it's been very small numbers. We don't have, oh, that guy, he owns, 2,500 homes.
Right.
And when if the banks and Fannie and Freddie are allowed to do that, we run the risk of never having the same kind of wealth building that we've had, that we've experienced in our lifetimes. It's very, very dangerous.
Yep. So we're on number 4 here. Can we go to 5?
Yep. The last thing, and then we're done.
We're done for now.
For today.
Yeah, right.
We must enact true mortgage reform. We have to get restitution. These people that lost, my restitution solution sort of looks like this. Anybody that lost their home to foreclosure, those 8 million people, they should be the first ones allowed to buy a vacant foreclosure. And the Fannie and Freddie should give them a loan to do so.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it doesn't match FHA rules, so they can't securitize it. Fannie and Freddie should not be allowed to securitize loans anymore anyway.
Right.
That's where I'm at. We should reinstate Glass-Steagall. We should institute public banks. This goes into what you were saying, like North Dakota. The fact is the Federal Reserve is a private corporation, and all of that income and money it earns goes to private individuals in this planet. That's why they say things like, well, I think the people that control, there's like 40 people that control the planet. Pick a number.
Right.
It's a small number.
Right.
And that's why. Because we have allowed that to happen. Now, if counties or states decide, forget that, we're going to set up our own public bank, we will create credit. It's called fractionalization, which is fine, but we, the county, the state, will benefit directly from that. It will go to the public instead of to the private pockets.
Right.
So skip the Fed. Forget them. We're going to fund all of our projects. We're going to set up our own public bank. We're going to put, $100 million into it. They can 30 times that. So now they can loan out money for loans for homes. They can pick whatever criteria they want because they're not going to securitize them. All that money is going to be coming back into the public fund. And the public will benefit from it. We're going to fund street projects. And so we're not going to go to market and pay some investors some percentage and then get caught into some insane, stupid stuff, which the bank sold all of our government agencies on, I forget what it's even called, but it's some kind of a game where the banks make a whole lot of money and we're losing.
Well, a lot of people have been talking about these state banks, and from my understanding, North Dakota is just about the only state that isn't underwater. They are doing okay. They didn't crash in 08.
Right. Well, and we should learn our lesson. And we should say, okay, if it's a home loan, we'll just go to the public bank. The public bank could give you a loan, a 30-year fixed loan at 3%. What do they care? They're going to sit on that money coming in.
Yeah.
And as the money comes in, they can fractionalize more and more and more. And eventually they could literally fund all the homes in this state. And we, the homeowners, as you pay, you have a very reasonable rate. They would always underwrite, so there would never be the balloons like we were talking about. You'd have to be able to afford it.
Right.
And the affordability is what keeps the lid on prices.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so we would suddenly
That's a good point.
be in a world of profit and gain and having money than where we're at right now, where everything is just being sucked out.
So I understand you do workshops.
I do.
Now, we're not
And
here to
teach-ins.
sell your workshops, but if people want to learn, this is the place to go. She's not that far away.
I don't
Santa
charge.
Rosa? You don't charge? How
doing
can you
this.
pass this up? If this situation doesn't piss you off, don't you want to do something and you can get free workshops from CJ Holmes? That's about as good as it gets. I mean, I'm so glad that you're not in Florida or somewhere. You're right here, just an hour down the road. And so if you're a homeowner in stress, or if you think you may have something coming along that could get you in trouble, talk to CJ.
I would love to, take an hour after church, and I would just be there, and homeowners could ask me a question, because all the questions are the same. You know that the answers are the same. It's just that people, they don't understand. They're caught up on one little issue, or this problem or that problem. And the fact is, if we had just a group, I could answer questions as a group, and give those people some assurance that, one, they're not alone. Two, it's not their fault.
Right.
And three, they're, at least as a group, we might have a way out.
Right. And they can get educated by you and perhaps people that you're educating. And as we said before, we all have to get out there and do something. We've got to show up, say, in Sacramento on the 25th.
Exactly.
And we just can't sit back and say, this is awful. This is terrible. Oh, well, it'll probably get worked out, because we're finding out now with the situation of things in our country and in the world, things aren't going to change unless we do something, because there are people that have the reins that are not going to let go. It's not going to change unless they hear from a lot of us. That's why we are in Occupy. That's what brought us out of our houses. As much as I enjoy working with Alex and working with Greg and working with all the people in our Occupy group, it's really not what I want to be doing with my life. I was a very happy musician living on a little farm in Redwood Valley. That's what I'd like to be doing every night. But I've got to do this because I can't sleep at night if I don't.
Exactly.
Get involved. Get in contact with CJ if this pisses you off. If there's any other topics that piss you off, we've got to get going. We cannot sit by any longer. And I guess we're just going to have to let this go for now. This has been a fantastic almost couple hours. And I really appreciate
the opportunity.
I really appreciate you coming out and driving all this way. You got to drive back to Santa Rosa tonight.
Not a problem.
So I will just say in closing, we're going to go to our Howard Zinn quote for the day. And if you can go to the blue screen, we'll finish up here, Alex. We don't have to engage in grand, heroic actions to participate in the process of change. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. That's what we're asking for. We're asking for each one of us to go out and do our small part. This has become like a second job for me. If we all took this on, we could really make some change. So for that, this is Charlie Vaughn and CJ Holmes signing off, and we'll see you around town.